listeners, today we are talking about some signs that might indicate that you're actually not quite yet ready to retire. So today joining is Jeremiah, Certified Financial Planner, Randy Barkley, Certified Financial Planner, and myself as well. Jeremiah is also a California licensed attorney. So let's dive in. What are some key indicators of when retirement might not quite be on the horizon?
Yeah, it is a really, really good subject matter. But of course, we're planners, so we want to write things down. We want to make sure that we have enough money. But financial insecurity is a big deal. And people, I mean, I just met with a couple and he wanted to retire. They wanted to move. And I went, and the wife she was very concerned. She thought for sure I would put a kibosh on it. And pretty much I did. They just weren't ready. They had too much debt. And, she said, well, he's stressed out at work. And I went, well, you think work is stress? How about not having any money going into retirement, right? That's a big stressor.
Right. Well, and the retirement income streams can be kind of complex and diverse. So it's not as simple as just getting your paycheck once or twice a month.
Right.
That's right. I love this topic. I think, Laura, you kind of came up with this idea, but I like so much online on social media, you'll see things like, am I ready to retire? If I have X, how to retire, things like that, as though everyone's gearing to retire. And many people are. But I think this is a great question of like, maybe you're just not ready. And we'll talk about some of the other soft factors. But Randy, my mind goes to the same place that yours does, is that initially just saying, what's the finances going to look like? And Laura, to your comment, there are very few people that we know that have one account with one stream of income and they just live off of that. Almost always it's there's Social Security, there's some sort of a pension, there might be an annuity, they have some retirement accounts, usually a few of them, some might be Roth, some might be regular, and even inheritance. We've had a number of folks that they inherit like some real estate, and so, or a retirement account, and so there's another stream of income. So for a lot of, when I first think of it, it's like, where is the money going to come from? That's going to support your future, and it doesn't have to be just one big chunk. That's where most people's minds go to. But yeah, there needs to be a little bit of the different buckets. And I had a client not too long ago that, I guess potential client, they're not a client currently. We were talking through retirement, and I just said, in 5 years, like, what is your income going to look like?
Right.
And they had no idea, and that's fine. I mean, most people don't generally, but for our clients, I know exactly what their income is going to be in 5 years. We've mapped out which account it's going to come from. And part of the planning is to say, is it enough? Like, will it last? Will it get through? And a lot of folks that when they first start meeting with us, I think retirement feels a little bit like a black box. Yeah, like, I know I've done well. I know I have good resources, but I don't actually know what my expenses or my income are going to be in the next 5 or 6 or 7 years. But that's fine. Let's go. They just kind of jump in. But for me, it's always, let's draw out a plan. Let's look at this. Let's do the math.
Well, and not just on the income side, that's critical, and multi-layered. Like we talk a lot about it in terms of levers. So much of the bulk of the preparation for Certified Financial Planner designation is about retirement, because it is so complex and there are so many different levers that you can pull on, and it has to do with what time is the best time to pull on which lever and to what extent. So we talk a lot to our clients about that, but also some clarity on what the recurring expenses in the household are going to be, because they may not be the same pre-retirement as they will be post-retirement. Maybe some debt's going to get paid off. Maybe you want that mortgage payment erased. Maybe you have some children that are moving out of your home, and so your cost of food might go down. Maybe the cost of insurance would adjust, right? Et cetera, et cetera. So.
Yeah, I think one of the I guess signposts are if somebody says, well, I can start taking my Social Security at 62, right? Well, technically you can, but you also have Medicare that starts at 65. So you could be without coverage, out insurance for that 3-year period. And people just don't realize how much it costs just to get insurance. And one tragic event or one healthcare scare could eat up all of your money. I mean, it's just crazy how much health insurance and just the cost of healthcare delivery is. So anyway.
Yeah, I like that comment even on the financial insecurity concept. There's a lot of folks who will do kind of the back of the napkin calculations. I know my account's this, my Social Security is going to be this. I spend this, kind of lower to your comment, they've done that math, and they say, well, it should be fine, so I can retire. And I really like when we go through the kind of the thought exercise of saying, well, how's the roof on the house? Is that going to last 20 years? Should we plan that in? Are you traveling and doing the fun things as much as you really hope to? Those are good. Then Randy, your comment, we look down the line often and say, what if there was a major health event and that you need to fund assisted living or different things later in life? And there's a lot of folks who that just is a scary unknown. But when we actually put some numbers to it, we actually kind of stress the plan. Our clients, as we go through it, we say, yeah, that's concerning, but you could afford this. And it gives them a whole lot more freedom to say, hey, if I walk into retirement and we do take that trip to Italy and we do spend some time going around the country in our RV and we know what those are going to cost us, if I know that in the future, even if we had these other health issues, we could still afford that as well. The plan of your finances can support both of those. I feel like it gives them a huge amount of freedom to make those good choices now to go on those trips when they're healthy or to enter in the retirement they want. But if they can't do that, if the plan won't afford those things, well, that's really good advice to say, yeah, day one, you'd be fine. But if you had one small health issue, you're going to run out of money. So let's do some different things with your planning to figure something out.
Yeah, and I think of course, we talk about this, and it's probably the most difficult thing for clients to do, and that's budget. And we really stress that people know what their spending is, and we try to put all the details in there. It's just interesting how many clients over the years that will tell me how much they spend, and when I actually calculate that, and we look at the cash flow. In other words, what I look at is that if you're spending that, that means that you should have this much more available at the end of the month or end of the year. I said, is that happening? And they, husband and wife, they'll look at each other and going, I don't see it in my account. So that means you're spending more than you realize, or you haven't budgeted. We need to know what those line items are.
Right. And there are challenges there. Like the number one answer to that question in our household is Amazon, right? Like have we created line items? Have we filtered where we're spending our money on Amazon, Target, right? Some of those other large retailers.
You got to categorize it, right?
Yeah.
Right. And
what is food and what is toys? What is personal items? What is necessity?
Right. That's realistic. I'm going to take a little bit of a twist here, which is that a client who is nearing retirement, I'm going to make some assumptions, maybe in their 50s or 60s. We are often seeing the result of what they're calling the sandwich generation. So we have that age group, and more often we're meeting with clients who are not only caring about their parents, but they also have adult children still living with them, or they are offering dependent care for their grandchildren. So it's not a question of just their financial resources for their retirement. It's, have your parents done a good job planning for their own medical health care delivery at the end of life, the assisted living needs that they might have, transportation needs that they might have. And then in addition, if a requirement of your time is providing childcare for your grandchildren, what would happen if you stepped away from that? Or if all of a sudden you were unable to do so? What impact would that have on the household and on your family? And so these are some dynamic questions that go in terms of why to build a financial plan. This is why we have kind of a dynamic plan where we get to deal with these different variables, because every situation is different. And it's not just as simple as how much money do I need to withdraw every month to keep my lifestyle the same. It's what are the needs of the whole household, right?
Yep.
And that whole household, what you just talked about, that whole household could be more than just two people. It could be all these other, like the sandwich generation. That is really a good observation, because how many households have expectations of paying out, and they'll talk to you and they'll say, oh no, it's just the two of us. But in reality, you start looking at the budget and you see all this other money that's going out, and it's not, well, I don't have to do that. But the question is, do you feel obligated to do that?
Right. Or do you plan to continue to do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a moment also, which I think is great in some of these conversations. We have a married couple and they don't have this, well, yeah, of course we'd support the kids. No, the kids are on their own. Like, they have kind of this difference of opinion. and so healthy, right? To have a dialogue around that. And sometimes we get to be the catalyst to bring out that discussion, easy or not. The other one I think about that financial insecurity is the overlay of taxes. And
Mm.
it's such a important thing that we step into, and anyone should, have an idea of their taxes, because, money coming out of somebody's savings account is very different than money coming out of their retirement account, which is also very different than money coming out of like a rental income from maybe a second property they have. Even though it's money, right? It comes with different tax consequences. And so how you can get the money, when to get the money, and how that's going to impact your taxes. One of my favorite, go ahead, Laura, if you had one.
I was going to say, when is your highest tax liability in retirement, right? When those required minimum distributions start coming out of those retirement accounts, we often see taxes increase because you're forced to start taking out from these tax deferred accounts. And I think to many people's surprise, their tax liability actually increases in retirement rather than decreases.
Right.
Yep. And one of my favorite charts, we use it a lot. It shows the different tax brackets and what the client is expected to pay in each year. And when you add all that up, some clients want to throw up a little bit of what they're going to pay in taxes, but it's really eye-opening to show what years we expect to be higher or lower taxes, because we've mapped out all of their income and all their expenses. And it really, I like the chart so much because it gives you such a strategic moment to say, oh, I can see if I were to put a roof on my house and had to pull out money for my retirement, I should do that in this year and not that year. And it gives some real strategy to the tax element of how to get that money and make it usable. So, and we've kind of hit on, knowing the income sources, knowing the outgoing expense sources, knowing the big ticket items, and knowing the taxes. And then also, Laura, I love that comment of knowing the family dynamics. I mean, all of those together, create retirement. And I think the financial piece, the last piece I would add with that is, what do you want to do? Some people are excited about retirement. They have a whole list of the items they want to do and be a part of and see, and they need money to do that. Others, they haven't really considered it yet, and they just know that I need money to buy groceries. And so I think encouraging people to basically find answers to all those questions, but one even including what fun things. We had one client that she just wanted to buy presents for her grandkids. That was it. That was her only need from the household. Pay the mortgage, buy groceries, things like that. But she didn't want to travel. She didn't want to do these other things. She just wanted to be able to have a little budget to buy and spoil the grandkids. And I thought it was just a beautiful clarity that's what she wanted to add to the conversation. Say, I just need this much to spoil the grandkids.
Yeah, I think on that note too, that the clarity and the purpose that comes after work is so critical. And there is research done in communities that have a high concentration of people that live to be over 100 years old, centennials. One of the common factors in these communities around the world is that individuals find purpose in their day, whether after work, post-retirement, or during work. And it could be their connections with people, the communities that they've built, the work that they do at their home, the work that they do to serve their community, volunteer work. Some people are more philanthropic than others. Some people have been waiting to dive into a project or do that travel that they've always wanted to do. So it's a time period to take a look at the bucket list and look at, is that the same? Do I still want to do those things that 10 years ago were aspirational goals? Okay, now might be the time to really consider, let me refine this budget list. And while you're at it, or the bucket list, go ahead and add a budget to that bucket list, because that's what your financial advisor is going to want to know. How are we going to actually make this all happen? And I think, Dad, you comment on a regular basis to clients that sometime around 80 to 85, there is a change in the desire to travel internationally. There's a change in terms of home renovations, home projects.
Well, my comment is like on homes. I said your home goes from blessing to burden. And it seems like that occurs, there's, I'm going from dealing with clients, but about 80, 85, working around the house and doing the things that you normally did, gardening and stuff like that, all of a sudden it becomes a burden. Things that you enjoyed, it just becomes more of something you don't look forward to. And so those are elements of that. But again, we're talking about the financial insecurity. So would you try to keep your home and try to do things that would cost you money to maintain your home during times when you just don't want to be there?
So, in addition to your
What if I,
home,
what if I like my work? Seriously. What if
oh,
I like just what I want to do, but
Oh,
everybody around me they come up to me and they say, when are you going to retire? And you're going, never.
yep.
So what if you're talking to somebody who just likes what they do and they don't want to transition out, and they're
right,
seeing all of their friends, their family, and even getting the questions, well, when are you going to do that? And they're going, I don't need to do that. First of all, I don't want to do that because I like what
right.
I do. A lot of people go into retirement because their physical body's broken down. They just can't continue to do what they're
Because of the
doing.
type of work they had or the type of career that they have. And
Right,
you say often, I'm not digging ditches every day, right? Like
right,
I'm able-bodied, my mind is sharp, like I enjoy what I do, why wouldn't I keep
right,
working? And
right,
so maybe, I do feel like we're having that conversation more often about a semi-retirement. Can I move from a full-time status into freeing up some more time to be able to go do this travel that I'd like to do or spend more time with my grandkids, but still continue to find value and purpose from the work that I do. So I think
right.
that's a
Yeah. Well, I think it's probably an under discussed topic. Like to your comment,
mhm.
Randy, at a certain age or a certain career point, I bet a lot of people start getting that question, maybe even unwelcome. Like,
Well,
no, I'm
again,
I'm here working.
a lot of my friends when we get together, they're all retired. And I said, great. And so it's funny because I'm a leader in a small group for my church, and I've made two of my people, two of the men. I said, no, you can't retire, and they both went out and got part-time jobs, and they now feel guilty if
Right.
they want to give those up. And I said, no, you got to continue working. And they're
Right.
going, for how
Right.
long? I said, don't you enjoy it? And both have admitted, oh yeah, we really enjoy it. So then, okay. And it's not just about money, it's keeping yourself engaged. You're
Yeah.
Yeah.
mentally engaged, you're socially engaged, but also mentally engaged because you're contributing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, I mean,
Yeah. Well,
there's only so many honeydews around the house, right?
Right. And
yeah.
yeah, the dynamic of the time that you spend together with your spouse may shift drastically. And, sometimes people are looking forward to that and sometimes not. Right. So,
Yeah.
the other big, oh, go
We
ahead.
joke that there's spouses that say, honey, could you just go back to work? Like, get out of my house. Like it's been fun and all, but like, why are you here every day?
Right.
But I think it's a
Go.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's a really important just perspective on that. Of we've had a number of in our experience, I guess they've been men who are engineers. Doesn't have to be that, but we've had a few of them that stayed on for a couple more years than they really had to. But they were enjoying their work, kind of the intellectual aspect of it. But two of them specifically, I'm thinking of, they had like this mentorship role where these
Mhm.
young engineers that were, it's when they're first or second, big careers. And then you have someone who's a retirement age, but he's able to pour into these younger men who are at the very beginning of their careers, teach them things, instruct them how to do things. And they really found a lot of just value and enjoyment in that
Mm-hmm.
process. They felt so relevant. They felt so needed. It was just a really good dynamic. And because of that, I think they stayed on at their companies, even though they didn't have to, but, and their desk work may not have been as much fun, as it used to be, but they really enjoyed the interaction with these young
Right.
engineers. I thought that was a really
Opportunity.
good wisdom.
Yeah, opportunity to leave a legacy and to take all the experience that they have and actually offer it, right, to the up and coming aspiring individual. This is why we ask you so many questions, Dad. One of the last factors that we haven't really talked about yet is healthcare delivery. So
Oh,
if you are thinking about retirement prior to Medicare age, which is age 65, you should keep in mind the added cost of health insurance.
so if I'm 63 years old, married, let's say my wife is 62, what's my cost going to be if I retire without health insurance benefit continued? What is my cost going to be per month to maintain reasonable coverage?
Yeah, I mean, there are estimates based on what your ongoing medical needs are and your prescription. We work with a fantastic company here locally that can help kind of make some of those estimates, but you're talking anywhere from like $1,000 to $2,000 a month.
A month.
A
And
month
most of it,
per person.
when we put those out, people choke because I mean, that is probably one of the biggest expenses that you could possibly face prior to retirement. And if
Mhm.
you don't have some jobs provide continuation of health care after retirement, but most private sectors do not. So you're having to pay that additional insurance premium. And healthcare delivery is so expensive. And that doesn't count
Mhm.
long-term care. That's just seeing your doctors and going to the hospital if you need to. I mean, so if you have something other than that, then that's additional cost and expense. So yeah, it can be
Right.
very, very expensive.
Right.
Yep.
So, just to recap for our listeners, these are some signs that you might not yet be ready to retire. Do you have a plan in place? Do you know where your income streams and how those retirement income levers need to work together as you step into retirement? Do you have a sense of purpose and a plan and what you'd like to do with your time as you step into retirement? Have you thought about healthcare delivery and the added potential expense, especially if you're younger than the age of 65? And think about your emotional attachment to the work that you do currently. If you were to miss that, what might replace that? How could you sustain that, et cetera, et cetera? So these are just some things to keep in mind as our listeners think about retirement.
Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review, even if it's not 5 stars. We welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordatvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordatvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.